Travis, my gazelle. So yesterday morning, I just got a whiff of heroin. Tried immediately to find the source of it. Was unable to do so, but it immediately sent me into a panic because of my experience at the shelter. I knew of the dangers and harm that it can do. And here I was in my brand new apartment and smelling it. And so, then a few hours later, I got tired, tried to take a nap, and all of a sudden had breathing problems from an allergic reaction. Which, yes, could have been the heroin. And so you'll notice in my videos since then that I've been coughing. Just like I was in the shelter in those videos. So hopefully it goes away, but how it came remains a mystery. And so the damage that the church had caused me is permanent. And they get to get away with it. After all these years of knowing it's the latter days, I've always wanted it to get over with so that I can get to Zion, the mental hope of peace, safety, and refuge, to flee from Babylon rather than be tortured in captivity because of the great and abominable church. So, chapter 17, huh? They, again, are still wandering in the wilderness. And this time they're heading eastward. So, yeah. This is not literal history. This is about the latter days. It's about leaving Babylon and heading to Zion. That because of Mormon's disobedience and not hearkening, Zion is not built. And so, as we found out, on the 6th, we have the reaching Zion and camp out. Everybody is assigned an inheritance within Zion. Those who are wicked are kicked out, not allowed in. Those 12 apostles, blame them, not me, for picking them, even though none of this has happened. And then the Sunday wedding fest. And then fulfillment on Monday, so that Tuesday we start the millennium. That's according to the Book of Mormon. So obviously, it has not happened yet. But this, going eastward to Zion, is the path. The I-70. And so women are bearing children along the way, because I'm positive that depending on the number of survivors, there will be women who were pregnant before it all happened. So yeah, I just got up from a nap again. But I am aware that the effects of the drug poisoning are wearing off. I didn't have my breathing problems this time around. Alrighty. And so women are super soldiers, just like the men. They were strong, even like unto the men. And no murmuring. Yeah, kind of hard to murmur when you're humbled with the afflictions of destruction, being forced to leave, rather than willingly choose to go because you know that it's the great and abominable church, and you figured out who your Christ is, and you hearken to him, and you leave in 2020 when you should have. Versus being forced to go because you're kids and you don't believe any of this. Utah was good, the church was true, just following visionary men to your death in the wilderness. You want to murder them. You know, the big difference for what causes the Exodus. And so, in verse 5, they make it. They're in Bountiful. So, notice it's east, not north. But yeah, Bountiful here in Utah is named from Bountiful in the Book of Mormon. And that's where Irene and Nelson live. It has much fruit and wild honey. So yeah, Zion. Paradise. So unfortunately it doesn't naturally happen. It's because of your efforts. That's what they're getting across here. The people who made it to Zion produced the fruit to be a Zion people. They're not murmuring. They did the work to be good people. And so this is what this portion of the Exodus version is referring to. And so all these things were prepared, O Lord, that we might not perish. So yes, because nobody went in 2020, this will not be the scenario. Nothing will be prepared waiting for us when we arrive. However, the first group that goes needs to do preparations for any others that come from around the world. As we know, there will be an exodus of Mormons who will believe and come to Zion to help build it. And there will be those Mormons around the world who will be in disbelief because it's not Nelson or Oaks or any of the other prophets. regardless of the manner in which the church falls, there will be those Mormons who just will not believe, live in denial, and will stay behind and rebuild where they are in the ruins or around the world. And so then that's the end of it there in verse 6. We see the tents again. And it came to pass that we did pitch our tents by the seashore. And so this is, again, not only a trigger of the end of this version of the story. It's just 6 verses. But also reminding us of the very version of getting to Zion, and the temple of Zion is not built. That it's like Moses, for the man like Moses, who has to have a tent temple called the tabernacle in the unbuilt, unprepared Zion, while people gather and the building commences. So, 7 goes to the top of the mountain, Utah. And this is Nephi, man like Moses. And needs to build a boat, just like Noah. In the latter days, it will be even as in the days of Noah, Matthew 24. So this is a comparable verse, or story here. We're starting on a new one. And so you'll notice that the story in the selections from the book of Moses about Noah has some distinctive differences added in. Did you know that? And so it's because of this portion right here that Nephi is comparable to Noah, and he needs to build a boat because the end of the world is coming. Mormons need to listen to him, top of the mountain, in order to go. And at first, the Mormons, are the older brothers, don't believe. And the man like Moses has to do it all himself. He has to do all the work himself, which I'm familiar with, but they're using it in the story version of building a boat, and finding ore to molten to construct the tools to construct the ship. And so yeah, I've had to do that with the collection of all of the records, and trying to survive, obtain food, trying to be prepared in case it happens, and then it doesn't happen, and I'm being attacked by my brothers who are wanting to murder me, by the Mormons, orders of the church, who demand that it's their right to rule over me. And so it's reminding us of previous versions of inspiration and revelation from the Liahona. I will be your light in the wilderness, prepare the way before you, if it so be that you keep my commandments. So yeah, there are likely to be some stories that occur of how you made it through certain destroyed towns of zombie apocalyptic people. Wearing MAGA caps. Gotta figure out how to get by all of them along the route. To deliver you from destruction. Brought you out of the land of Utah. And so, yeah, it's doing a reminder of the previous Exodus versions with this new Exodus version to help us understand that this is another version of that. Escaping destruction. Noah escapes destruction, builds a boat. Now Nephi is building a boat, even though they're in the promised land, according to the previous verses we just read. They were there. They had a great life now, but they're still moving on, and we're being told in the story form about the previous Exodus versions about escaping what appeared to be prosperity, but was coming destruction. And so this first group left in 2020, 600 years before the coming of Jesus on 8 April 4 CE. 220 years before the last day of the latter days on 8 April 2024 CE. Solar eclipses. It's unique enough of an event so as not to be confusing. That's what they use here. Joseph Smith Sr. uses here. And so, yeah, there's also stories for how the rest of the world makes it to Zion with this great gathering that's to take place. Is that every Mormon from around the world will have their Exodus story to tell. And so, yes, there will be those who will take a ship to come to Zion and have to escape, be delivered from the destruction in their countries and in the countries that they passed through to get here, and the destructions on the waters. And so, yeah, there have been Mormons who mocked me that there was no way that I could be a prophet, seer, revelator, and translator, because only Nelson is. And so, yeah, they're complaining. Behold, these many years we have suffered in the wilderness, which time we might have enjoyed our possessions and the land of our inheritance in Utah. We might have been happy. We know that the Mormons who were in the land of Utah were a righteous people, for they kept the statutes and the judgments of the Lord. Do you? Do you? And all this according to the law of the Book of Mormon and Joseph Smith. Wherefore, we know that Mormons were righteous people. And you are judging them. You led us away because we would hearken unto your words. Yeah, you don't get to go to Zion with that kind of an attitude. Do you want to stay in Utah? Fine. Nobody's going to be forced for this latter days. And so then he refers to the scriptures, refers to the Exodus. a little cough. Do you believe that our ancestors, the house of Israel, would have been led away out of the hands of the Egyptians if they had not hearkened unto the words of the Lord? It was Moses. See what it did there? Do you suppose that Mormons would have been led out of bondage if the Lord had not commanded Moses that he should lead them out of bondage, the man like Moses? Now you know that the children of Israel, Mormons, were in bondage. You paid tithing, you're in bondage. You know that you were laden with tasks, criminal tasks, grievous to be borne. Wherefore you know it's a good thing that they be brought out of bondage. See what he did there? They're trying to claim that Mormons in Utah are righteous. So he refers to the scriptures from the brass plates, remember, about the Exodus, comparing what they're doing to the Exodus. That's the clue to the reader, that this is what the comparison is to be. And so we get to a prophecy. You know that the Mormons, who were chasing the Mormons led by Moses, were drowned in the Reed Sea, who were the armies of Nelson. Yeah, that'll be an interesting thing if that happens. But you missed the Exodus in 2020. So it may not happen. But it could be Mormons who think that they're going to rule after the destruction and force people to stay so that they can rule over them. That's always a likely scenario. And then talks about Moses smiting a rock. Water comes forth. Not real, not literal history, symbolic. Though it is possible, because you can use coat hangers, have them sit in your hands, and as you walk, when you pass over water, the metal rods will cross. X marks the spot, like Zion, in Southern Illinois. Real cool. You can do it over your toilet. Works just the same. There it is. There's the source of water. Confirmed. And so their Redeemer going before them. That's Moses. Mormons were reviling against Moses, against the true and living God, Emmanuel. And those complainers were destroyed. And then he skips over to crossing the River Jordan with Jesus. You know that? You don't find it in the Torah. This is the book of Jesus, where this part is that they're skipping to. After they had crossed the River Jordan, he did make them mighty unto the driving out of the children of the land. So that's another scenario that is potential, is that there may be people living in the area still, and they may not want to leave or may not want to join. The land was bought and paid for by the Knights Templar. Mormons are of the bloodline. The Knights Templar. The Christ is the bloodline of the bloodline race. It is our land. We have a right to it, and the receipt still exists to this day. It's paid for in 1363. And so that's another potential scenario that could happen, is that there will be people who will try to keep us from building our Zion. Not just Mormons who are disbelievers. He that is righteous is favored of God. So he is no respecter of persons. If you are righteous, you're favored. That's how not being a respecter works. Is that it's up to the person to determine if they are going to receive favor. If they choose to be wicked, then they don't get favor, and thus all are treated equally. But Mormons have rejected every word of the Book of Mormon and of Joseph Smith. And Mormons were ripe in iniquity, full of the wrath of God. And Utah was cursed in the air, in the water, in the soil. The whole land was polluted. And thus it was cursed unto their destruction. Purpose of the earth. Supposed to be inhabited. Humans are supposed to exist. You know, those tree huggers who think that plants should have dominance over the world and over humans, so that we shouldn't be allowed to build. We can build, we just don't want to destroy the earth. Kind of ruins the whole point. The whole point is to domesticate, make the earth a garden that we live in, rather than deplete the resources. There's a big difference, but people like to go to the extremes. Alright, raises up righteous nations, destroys the nations of the wicked. And thus the righteous are led into precious lands, and the wicked he destroyeth, and curseth the land. And so, reminding us of the covenants of the bloodline, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the usurpers of the birthright and blessing. Likewise, a man like Moses is usurping the birthright and blessing back from the great and abominable church, who usurped it from Joseph Smith. That's why the Genesis account speaks of continuous, repetitious usurpation of the birthright and blessing, because it's a prophecy of the latter days. So we're going to have dragons. They're prophesying about the house of dragons. It's so true. Fiery flying serpents. Mormons who are bit by them will be healed if they look at his staff. He got preserved. And from time to time they reviled against their Christ. Yeah, this is a scenario of the 2020 Exodus, because he says, I know not, but they are at this day about to be destroyed. Yeah, if this were literal history, they would have long since been destroyed. It was 11 years later. Nephi was born in the first year of the reign of King Zedekiah. So he was 11 years old at the oldest to be able to do this. And so if it were literal history, yeah, they would have long been destroyed. Pretty much soon after they left. They were just barely ahead of Babylon's army. But it's not. And so in this particular case, it's those of us who go to Zion in 2020 and we're unsure of what's going on because we don't have access to the internet or TV or the news to know what's going on in the rest of the United States and the world. We know that if we had left when we should have, we would have known of creeping death, but we would have escaped it. Would have been an isolated people. But we would have known nothing of what was going on and how serious it became. Verse 44. So yeah, this was a situation where the man like Moses was commanded that he should depart, and Mormons sought to take away his life. And just like the Mormons, they are murderers in their hearts. You are swift to do iniquity and slow to remember your Lord your God. You have seen angels, messengers, not actual angels here. You have heard his voice, called it a still small feeling. You couldn't feel his words because of your still small feeling. You were past feeling. Magna earthquake. None of you caught on that had to do with it. Mormons instead were looking for another earthquake even bigger, because that's not good enough. Despite the symbolism of it all, Magna means strong. And it knocked out the horn of Moroni. That was the clue, Mormons. You're supposed to leave. And you didn't leave. The waters of the sea were parted so that you could pass through on dry land. And you didn't leave. You didn't hearken. So yeah, you're past feeling. Not you guys who are listening, especially now in this video, because you didn't even know about me. YouTube did not make yourself known unto me. I'm not make myself known unto you. But I had followers back then. I had 500 followers on this channel. What happened to them? Well, they died. There's only a handful that survived during all this time period until this last April conference when I picked up 300 more. Almost 400 since. Although lately I've been doing videos that have been pissing people off, and subscribers are dropping like flies. Yep, they can't endure. This is too hard for them to handle. They're not believers. And so, yeah, it is does a lot of talking rather than building. I did a lot of videos but was building at the same time. So yeah, Mormons, like I did in an earlier video today, Mormons do not respect my credentials. They don't think that I can build a boat, metaphorically speaking. They don't believe that I am inspired by God because I preach about Mormons' wickedness and about the church's abominations. So therefore I have to be wrong. And so they don't believe that I'm inspired by God to be a translator, to show that the Book of Mormon is true and Joseph Smith is true and the learning of the Jews. Because if it's true, then the church is false. And they will not deny the church. They have to believe I am wrong in order to maintain their beliefs that the church is true, and thus are weaponized to hate, to violence, to death threats that I've been going over with you lately and all these years. And so, yeah, Mormons can't contend against me because I quote from the Book of Mormon. I just get an occasional viewer who goes to the one video where I don't explain everything, and they think that they've got an excuse to attack me in violation of even Nelson from this last April conference, telling Mormons to have civil dialogue online. Mormons can't do it. They are past feeling. So yeah, it shocks them. I saw that episode on House. Electrocuted boy. Because of the uranium exposure that he was exposed to down in Jamaica. Was a tough one. But yeah, there's also a behavioral condition of psychology that psychologists don't want to acknowledge, except for Natasha Helfer. We'll close with this because we're at the end of the passage here, because the ship is finished in 18, so that's a different story. So yeah, they're about to worship me. Get up. Yeah, nobody's going to be worshiping me. That's just going to be too weird. So, yeah, there's an interesting condition of humans by their very nature. Scientific biology, as I've gone over with you. Males are designated as those who have seed. Females are those who are designated with egg. And the only way to have sex is for seed to enter into the egg to produce the offspring. Those are the only two sexual identities. There are no other sexual identities. This is science. This is truth. It's psychology who's been screwing this up. And so they have been telling us to try to get more clients who are religious background, because religions deny science, deny our human biology concerning sexual behavior. Without the sexual behavior, sperm would never enter into the egg and would never produce offspring. And so, the sexual desire is so that this can be done. And psychology knows this. And when we don't do it, when we're being deceived and miseducated by saying that it's abstinence only, that we should live like monastics, and that's a higher spiritual self. The higher spiritual self is male, female, producing offspring. Man cannot be perfect without the woman. Woman cannot be perfect without the man. It is essential, and it is known to the ancients. David is the double D's that are combined together into the celestial son. The highest degree of the celestial kingdom for Joseph Smith is for married couples. And then Brigham Young corrupted it by making it polygamy is the only way to be exalted. But regardless, sexual urge is a hierarchy of human need. We have to have it. And yes, it's an orgasm. We don't necessarily have to produce a baby every time in order to be happy. But that's how we are able to be happy, is the sexual desire. If we bottle it up, if we deny it, and try to pretend it doesn't exist or that we can just shut it off, we become grumpy or pissy. The TV show House, in that episode I saw. And I've seen this in other people as well as myself. That, for example, working at Beehive Clothing, there was this one day where it was obvious something was up. Because a guy who'd been working with us, we knew him, he really didn't smile, didn't laugh, he just was slow and casual in his work, workhorse. And then all of a sudden, this one day, he's smiling, he's happy, he's fast. Very unusually fast. It's like, we didn't know you could work this fast. You've been holding out on us. And there's another woman who worked in human resources, who's a very grumpy old woman. Very mean. But on this same day, she was happy. She was kind. What day? What did you think it would be? Give you a hint. It was the 15th of February. Everybody's having fun but me. So yeah, it affects your mood. It is essential for our hierarchy of needs. It is number one. We need it more than food. And so when you have the church telling us it's evil and that we have to abstain until we get sealed in the temple, being a full tithe payer, that we have to suppress it with hymns and hymns and prayers and reading the scriptures and prayer, going to the temple, occupying ourselves with service to others. It just makes it worse, especially for guys. I'm not sure about women. Theirs seems to be more cyclical. But for guys, yeah, we don't, well, we do, but it's different. And so when you get into a marriage and you're uneducated on sex, and you have a Mormon woman who is told that men are supposed to refrain, and they then start abusing the man in the marriage. Because the man is thinking, I'm waited until we got married, and now we're married. This is what it's all for. She married me so that I can do this. Nope. Tricked ya. It was a trap. Well, so problems ensue. Marriages get destroyed because of the misinformation. And so psychologists don't make it any worse. They do make it worse. They help the church by telling people that seeing naked women or seeing the sex is addictive. But you see your wife naked. You see yourself having sex with her. Are you now addicted to porn? No! They're taking advantage of your basic biological scientific functioning. And they're exploiting it so that they can make money off of you. And at the same time, help the church. Because that's what family services is all employed with, is psychologists, counselors, therapists. Not a single scientist is working at family services. And BYU is being infiltrated by psychology. My brother was infected with sociology, being replaced with psychology. Their legal system replaced with psychology. Their medical system replaced with psychology. Psychology is taking over the state of Utah because the church is using them as a weapon against us to keep us under control. Because when we are natural, which is part of the hierarchy of needs, the church tries to make us feel guilty about it. That we have sinned and that we have to come to them on knees, worshiping them to forgive us. So that we can be back in their favor. They own us. We are in bondage. Because they refuse to teach us the truth. And so YouTube's community guidelines? Excuse me? Whose community guidelines? YouTube is worldwide. It's now separated out the children. So it's the adults. If they can separate the children, they can also separate adult content. They don't bother to do that. Instead, they punish people who put up adult content, which, are you kidding me? We're adults. It's always adult content. But they're taking it from religion to justify punishing people for no crime at all. And then now we're hearing that they're allowing white supremacists to dominate YouTube. And then recently, they're allowing misinformation about the 2020 election. And yet they're still going after people for adult content, which is ridiculous. There's no such thing. It's all based on the lies of religion and psychology, who try to vilify our bodies and our desires. And so yes, there are lots of people who all of a sudden are in denial of science because of psychologists who were put in the school systems to do this. And so they think that there's something other than what science tells us we are. And they are replacing people in sports positions. And we're being told that if we don't allow them to replace women, which women have already been dealing for millennia about being replaced and being subjugated, having to fight just to be treated as human, not just equal. And now all of a sudden, we have to accept this non-reality of identity, or we're the bad guys, and we have to allow them to replace women. And they're replacing women and becoming superstars, breaking world records, because they aren't good enough in the men's category. They couldn't get a job in the professional leagues in men's. So they then said, well, psychology tells me that I'm not, so I'm going to go play in the women's, because that's who I am. That's who I feel like I am. And women are getting abused again. At the same time that women just had Roe v. Wade overturned. And now they're going after Utah, overturn the clinics. No more clinics in Utah. They're going after abortion pills. And then they'll go after contraception. They've already punished people who are single moms financially. They want to strip you of your baby that in many cases you were raped, or you were forced to get a divorce because of an abusive spouse. This is how evil the enemy is to destroy women. And they victimize and they bully whenever you try to stand up and say, I am human. I want to be equal. I want to be treated equally. That's what the Constitution says. And the Constitution is under attack. So, if they win, women will be placed back into bondage, denied their rights, denied status as human, because women will just be breeders. And so, unfortunately, women don't believe this. They're not watching me. And they're the ones who are in greatest need of help.